Hello and welcome to Sideshow's New York Con. I'm Anna Van Slee, Head of Business Development at Sideshow, and I've got an exciting panel for you today. As Head of Business Development at Sideshow, digital collectibles is something I've got an obvious interest in, been following for quite some time. But with the recent advent of blockchain technology and NFTs, there's been some very exciting developments. And I've got with me today some experts from the NFT space to talk with me about digital collectibles, the present and the future. So I'd like to invite you, all my guests, to introduce yourselves one at a time. Tell me a little bit about the company you work for and your role and how that's relevant to digital collectibles.
I can start if we want to kick it off. Hi, guys. My name is Shannon Kelly. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of NFTs. We are an NFT marketplace. So we are launching communities and projects in NFTs, and we work primarily with brand partners, a lot of studios who are entering the space. So they're making big plays in this area. So have a little bit of knowledge in this so far. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'll go next. I am Ben. I go by B. Earl. I have a company with Taboo from Black Eyed Peas called Skyview Way. Writing Marvel comics, developing film, TV, all sorts of entertainment. But I've been working in the blockchain space off and on since about 2017. Launched a PFP project, animation project, in October of last year. And then now I've been working with Sideshow on digital strategy, collectibles, Web3, metaverse, all those fun buzzy words. And also working with Anthony Apollo here for many years. It feels like a decade in blockchain years.
Yeah, those blockchain years are like dog years. My name is Anthony Apollo. I am the founder and CEO of Renza Games. We are building a platform for video game development and distribution on both the Ethereum and Polygon blockchains. The most important thing for us is using this technology to better recognize creators both financially and reputationally. Digital collectibles are a large part of that. As Ben mentioned, I've been in this space for a number of years. So I remember back in the day when CryptoKitties, which was one of the first NFT types of collections, actually slowed the Ethereum network down to a crawl, and saw this big community effort to kind of remediate that and speed things back up. So I've been around for a while and excited to continue the conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you, all three of you, again, for joining me. Like Ben mentioned, there are a lot of buzzwords being thrown about related to NFTs, and it can be confusing space to get into, even if you're interested in. So I'd love to start with just establishing a baseline of, let's talk about what is an NFT. And, I'd like to talk that through both technically and talk a little bit about some of the blockchain technology and like what it actually is. But I would also like to get into what that means experientially. We all know what a physical collectible is, but in the digital space, that can be, many different formats and can take on different shades of experience as well. So, Anthony, if you wouldn't mind starting us off maybe with a technical explanation. And from there, we could move into, experientially, what does it mean to have an NFT collectible?
Absolutely. So an NFT, the acronym itself stands for non-fungible token, which really means it is a unique digital collectible. You own that copy of that thing, and no one else does. That may have a lot of different elements to it already. It might mean there's unique attributes bestowed upon that digital collectible. There could be certain levels of rarity for any given attribute that it may kind of contain. And the kind of colloquial NFT is typically a ERC 721 token on the Ethereum blockchain. Essentially, the blockchain community has come together over these years to create several standards that really try to codify the best way of doing things through efficiency, through transparency, and making sure that, everyone's kind of on the same page. Another kind of big element of that is that all of these code bases are what would be called open source, which means they are publicly available for anyone to audit, and that should give people an idea of how the code works. And it also kind of creates this enhanced level of security because anyone, anywhere, at any time is able to audit that code. And if there are flaws in it, people can point those things out. There is another standard for digital collectibles that we use at Renza Games called ERC 1155s for whatever that's worth, which is a refungible token standard originally proposed by a team called Engine. I understand this is a lot of vernacular already, but essentially that is just another way to create digital collectibles. They would have less of these particular unique attributes to them, or they might be unique or may not be unique, but it is a more efficient way of kind of delivering digital collectibles. And I think I'd probably like to pass it over to Shannon at this point, because their platform at NFTs does a lot of this. And if you want to come back around to the example of how you could do NFTs that aren't really NFTs, you can come back to the rents and games side. But I think Shannon can probably add a lot of color here.
Before you jump in quickly, if I could draw quickly an analogy that might make sense to someone who's coming from a purely analog collecting standpoint. And then Shannon, I'd love for you to weigh in on that. So there's some NFTs that are essentially like uniques, right? So in the physical world, that would be a handmade item. But then there's some that are more like a mass-produced item, very limited edition, but you would have essentially from the same mold. There might be some variances, but you'd have an edition that are, a limited number of copies of the same thing. It's sort of, is that the analogy there for the different types of NFT collectibles?
Yeah, that's perfect. I was actually going to, refer to them like baseball cards versus a one of one, collectible that Sideshow would make, for example, or something. Absolutely, though, that's right. The difference between a 721 and an 1155. I love all the terms, though, Anthony. Just get right into it. Let's do it. There's the one of ones, and then there's the more collectibles, but they can be a closed edition. So maybe it's one of 1,000 or one of several thousand, or they can be an open edition, and whoever wants to come in and get one can get one. That's sort of the different ways that you can have NFTs. I think to me, aside from all the technical jargon, what it really means for us, especially at NFTs, is kind of ownership of your fandom, right? Like you can come in and really be a proud owner and an immutable owner, really, of this fandom, because it's on the blockchain, it's an NFT, it's all public domain, like you can see everything. And it's yours. Like the brand can't take it away from you. The fan can't take it away from you. And so long as the longevity of the internet, which is not going anywhere, like that's how long that this will keep going. So it's really interesting to me to see that how it can mean so many different things too. So once you have this ownership into it, that could mean, the experiential part that you were talking about. Like, yes, I own this NFT, which is usually in the representation of an image or a video, or it could be anything really, anything can be an NFT, but then it comes with so many other things. You're part of this community. You can have voting rights and things. You have utility that you can access things through the ownership of this NFT. We call that token gating. It's where you prove your membership with your NFT or your token, and then you have access to other things. And that could be events, that could be video content like this. It could be anything really, and really allowing the fans to participate in ways that haven't been done before. I think it's like, well, can't brands, or the question to me that always comes up is, well, why can't a brand just release a digital collectible? And it's like, they could, and they have, but if that brand decides that they want to get rid of that website the next day or shut it down, where does that digital collectible go? It goes, no, you lose it. You lose that accessibility. So if that were to happen, nowadays, even with NFTs, with all the work we've done, work with Warner Brothers on the Matrix and Looney Tunes. If they suddenly decided they no longer wanted to support it and Warner Brothers shuts down, that collection is still there. You are still a Matrix fan. You are still part of the Matrix community. It's not going anywhere, and that can still continue and grow. So that's why it really excites me about this space as well, is that it's ownership of your fandom. I
can chime in on that because my background is a storyteller.
Get in there, Ben.
I'm jumping in. So I've, in founding a project, we founded a PFP animation project. And what we do with that is we actually work with our community in developing the storytelling, writing the scripts with them, creating the animation, taking their characters, actually putting it into the show. And we're working with professional, animation studio. I myself professionally write, working with Marvel, writing new Spider-Man series, been developing with Cartoon Network and Gaumont. So, my background, comes from the space of storytelling, but what we can do is bring in our fandom into the creative process. I equate it to myself as an 11-year-old kid, always wanting to write Marvel comics, and now I get to play in the sandbox of Marvel. Isn't that a cool thing if you get to join in on a fandom at a very early kind of creation space of it, and actually joining that trajectory and help shape the path of it and actually be a part of that, storytelling. And I think that's where it really excites me the most. I think that we can collect things, but then what do you do with the collectible? And as a collector myself, it's like, great, cool, I can put it on my shelf. But, the wallets, and I think we'll jump a little more into this, the idea of holding your own wallet, having your fandom or your digital ontology, as I like to call it, be able to carry with you into any space that you go. And I think that's where we're, kind of getting to these buzzy words of like metaverse and things like that. But, we're kind of looking at this in a very long-term positioning. What does the future look like in the next 10 years? What does it look like in the next 20 years? And what are you collecting right now? It's an early phase, but when you start collecting different things and they have different utilities and usage, I mean, there's so much that you can take into the world that, that we're building in these 3D spaces.
I'm glad you mentioned the wallet, because that's something I wanted to dig into. I mean, there's lots of different types of collectors, folks that are, completists by brand or by character or by scale. But I think one thing that all of us collectors have in common is that we're, investors to a degree. We look at our pieces, and it's not just an expression of our fandom and our love of our brand, but, especially high-end collectible space is an investment piece, and there are secondary market values that we follow, and there's, buying and selling and trading, and it can be a very lucrative hobby. The NFT market, I mean, if you follow the news, and obviously there's some clickbait here, but there's some huge numbers that have come out of, different NFT sales. Can you guys speak to that a little bit? And what, from a ground level too, I'd like to know how would someone go about getting into this? Like, what do you really need? Is there cryptocurrency involved? Ben, you mentioned a wallet. I'd love to hear a little bit about that secondary market for collectors in the digital realm.
Who wants to take this one? I can start it off.
Yeah, kick it off.
Well, I was literally on a panel yesterday and we talked about this. So I'm like, all right, guys, ready to go. A very similar question that came to me is, how do I know what to choose in an NFT project? And honestly, like anything, it's about educating yourself and doing the research, right? And seeing. But I also like to say, start with what speaks to you. Start with what you have an affinity for, what you think is cool. Start with, your favorite comic artist or a favorite brand of yours or a favorite franchise, and just learn and get into it. And then the rest of that will follow. Because there are investment opportunities, but mostly it's just fun. We all like to collect also because it's fun. And I like to look at my things on my wall, I like to look at my things on, in my wallet. And speaking of that, yes, you do need a digital wallet to purchase an NFT. And it used to be strictly with Ethereum, which is a cryptocurrency that you have to use. But now you can purchase, with a credit card. There's been a lot of transitions and advances in this area that makes it a lot more accessible and easier for everybody to start collecting. One thing I would recommend though is to, just get out there and try something out and teach yourself how to do it. Open a MetaMask, or you can get a Coinbase wallet. There's so many different options there that are very easy for users to learn and start collecting. I think if we want to get into technicals, which I can leave to these guys, I mean, there are things as a hot and a cold wallet. And what that really means is a hot wallet is on the internet. That is what I open on my browser, and I can open my MetaMask. And a cold wallet is what a lot of bigger collectors use, because they're an actual hardware piece that you can take with you, and you can put it in a safe, and it's not going to be online. And there's companies like that, like Ledger is a good example for that. So once you want to step up to that bigger level, that's when I suggest, getting a hardware wallet. But you can start simple. You can just start collecting what you love, and try it out. It is really fun. That's, always remember that it's meant to be fun, and it's meant to be community building too.
Yeah, to dovetail right off of that, I think there are certain levels to how this works, and there is that educational path that I think we're all alluding to. Again, I've been in this space for a while, so I remember when these things were first created, like MetaMask, which is a digital wallet. Essentially, you don't have an email or a password to log in. You are given a set of private keys that you need to hold kind of near and dear to your heart, and don't tell anybody what that is. And then you're given a public address, which is essentially a bunch of alphanumeric gibberish that represents you. And that is a very different even way of thinking about things from where we've been for the last, decade and a half with Web 2 and social media, where everything is tied to your Facebook or your Google account. So this is a way to really kind of do things on an individual basis, but you don't have to jump right into doing everything yourself first. We refer to that as self-custody, which is that you're holding all of your own NFTs and your own tokens in your own wallets, whether that's in a MetaMask hot wallet or if that is an offline cold wallet. What I will say is there are lots of platforms like the Nifties of the world who have done a great job putting blockchain in the background. You could purchase NFTs on their marketplace simply by swiping that credit card, and that would be called what we call a non-custodial solution. For our platform at Rensa, we do everything through MetaMask, which is by virtue of us needing to build more functionality into the site. So the way I like to think about that from a go-to-market perspective is there are 3 billion gamers on the planet. There are 30 million MetaMask users, right? So the numbers are completely, disproportionate. And if you are working in any kind of blockchain-based project or NFT-based project, and you really want to reach a very big audience of collectors, of fans, of communities, you need to work towards putting all those technical details in the background the best you can.
I'm going to steal that line, Anthony, for our brand deck. Say that
All
we're
yours.
blockchain background. Yes, thank you. That was a perfect way to put it, though. Yes, that's
I like
what
my
our goal
alliteration.
is. That's our goal.
I think the other thing that's also happening are multi-chain wallets, and there's wallets like, I know we've been talking a lot about Ethereum. The project we launched was on Solana. Our Chihuahua's project was a completely entirely different blockchain. Polygon is what's called a layer 2 to the Ethereum blockchain, but Solana is its own blockchain. And there are several others that are like that. So in order to get a Chihuahua, you must have a Phantom wallet in order to purchase it. So, that is where that first it is a little more of a friction to it, because you have to understand. Someone might be like, oh, I can use my MetaMask and go and buy a Chihuahua. And you're like, well, no, you can't. You need to have the Phantom wallet in order to be able to engage the Solana blockchain. But, as Anthony was saying, and I think in Shannon as well, it's like, where there are, these credit card options like MoonPay that allow for that, ability to buy it. I'm not sure if Magic Eden has that yet, because if you want to buy one of our Chihuahuas, you have to buy it on a secondary market, and that's Magic Eden, which is primarily Solana. So I think, it's really interesting because, you start looking at these different blockchains and what the reasoning behind those blockchains and the why. And, really collectors don't care that much, but there are some that are like, oh, Ethereum itself, if you have an Ethereum NFT, that's like a gold standard. But if you have a something on another blockchain or a second layer, a layer 2 blockchain, it might be a little bit more of a like, oh, that's cool. Like it's more of a, not as high end. So maybe it's like considering, more of a mass market versus a 721 Ethereum that is like more of a one-of-one. And I think, Shannon probably wants to jump in more on that because I see you nodding, and I think that's something that we can talk about. I think we've talked, about those sorts of things in what with Nifties, where it's like, you could do something on, I think Nifties, your Palm network, but I think you're going Polygon as well, right? So those are layer 2s to Ethereum.
Yeah, and we just integrated Ethereum, so yeah.
Right, yeah. So I think, at the end of the day, collectors are not, I don't think, going to care that much, but there will be those kind of like upper tier collectors that are going to go, I want that thing because it's a prestigious X, that it has some sort of feel to it. And, so I think it's very similar in the physical side of things. And I think, I have an 11-year-old son, right? So it's like, how do you get kids to be able to collect Sideshow collectibles, for instance? But my son's like, Dad, I really want this, I forget the other day he was saying, he's like, I want this Sideshow collectible. And I'm like, Liam, when you have $350 in your wallet, I just bought you this autograph for your WWE collection. But I think that's a challenge, like as parents and parents that are raising kids that are into collecting and that are into fandoms, you want to be able to give those certain tiers. And I think that's the really exciting thing about working with Sideshow. Something I love, like I love Sideshow. I've loved Sideshow ever since, I've been going to Comic-Con, and I go to Comic-Con and see all the amazing statues. And there was that part of me that was like, man, it'd be so cool if I could, grab one of those and have it for my shelf. And I think now with digital collectibles, I think people are able to show their fandom off in a different way, and it's not as high of a barrier of entry, and they can graduate to that higher level once they've, gone through their collecting and figured out what they really are passionate about, what collections they're passionate about.
Switching gears a little bit, but Anthony mentioned earlier, and I think tied into this, the realm of NFTs is really inextricably Web 3.0. So just from a very remedial explanation, Anthony, could you differentiate between Web 2.0 and Web 3.0?
Sure. I think the biggest differentiator there is that Web 2.0 is typically you're giving your data up to somebody else in kind of a social media environment. And in Web 3, there's a big push to everybody owning their own data or owning their own collectibles, and really being able to kind of control your own destiny in that capacity. And that also allows for stronger fandoms to be built. So for us, if we wanted to launch, let's say, a game jam on our platform with a specific IP holder that had already launched a series of NFTs, we can look at who holds those and say, you can participate, you can develop games in this game jam because you hold these NFTs, or you can be a judge in this game jam because you hold these NFTs. And it's a much more granular way of reaching really dedicated fans than it is to kind of be on these Web 2 networks where there's large amounts of people, potentially large amounts of bots, and these messages go out. And I like to say that the most engagement I get on Web 2 social media sometimes is like, I'll put a tweet out and then I'll get like 6 responses from bots before I put my phone down. That'll be like the most engagement we get. But with this Web 3 kind of realm, everything is really kind of tight and tied together with real true fandoms that may have a token in their wallet. That is the token gating experience that Shannon talked about a little earlier. And that opens up a whole new realm of functionality.
I was going to say, Shannon, you touched on this too earlier with really owning your own collectibles. And when you own that, it doesn't go away if the Matrix online presence does. Could you speak to that a little bit more, maybe with that example or another one too, just from a fan perspective, like some of the engagements that you guys have facilitated, that fans are part of a pop culture brand?
Yeah, I mean, it differs, for each one. The Matrix was a good one it was I think it might still be one of the biggest programs done back all the way like a year ago, back in the day. And we sold 100,000 Matrix avatars, and that represents, an avatar also is just it's a one of one, you randomly generated basically a representation of yourself on the internet. So we took the world of the Matrix and then we made these avatars. So now you could own, an avatar that would be yours in the Matrix. And then right off the bat, we gave everyone the opportunity to choose the red pill or the blue pill, and they could, have that experience. And then it would change their avatar. And that was actually, we created 3 different NFTs so that you could choose the experience and lock that in. So we've been continuing that now with just regular engagement of the community, everything from watch parties to challenges to activities, more NFTs, more fun, rewards for your fandom. That's where it gets really exciting, I think. And to that point, that even if we went away, even if Nifty's went away or Rensa or another company, like that community would still exist and they could still interact with one another and keep it going. We're right now just the facilitator, but it's meant to be really owned by the community. And to that end, if Rensa came up with a Matrix game, those users could take their avatar and put it in that game as well. Like they're not meant to be stationary, like on, I like to think of it like, I love collectibles too, and I love, but it really, people have to come over to my house to look at it, right? They have to come and see it, or I can show you, on this chat. But when everything is on blockchain and on Web3, like I can interact with it all day long if I'm online with the community, and I can take it anywhere that I'm going online. I can take it into a game. I can, take it into this token gated experience. That could be exclusive, experience just for that too. It's really fun. That's what I think is really cool also about just Web3.
Thank you. That's awesome. And then Ben, as a storyteller in the space, I thought maybe you'd want to build on that a little bit too, with like coming at it from someone that is building homes for these communities, populating it with the stories. What are some of the unique opportunities from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really exciting is that you feel a connection to a character. And when you do buy these characters, these one-of-one characters, then you get to put them and in a story, in a world. So in our Chihuahua's world, we have these little dogs that are alien dogs, and we've got this crazy world and a crazy planet that they live on, and they're doing crazy things. And we've got a story that we're creating an animated pilot that basically we're taking suggestions from the community, helping craft and shape that from our own professional expertise. And I think that's the biggest thing that NFTs can give is access. Whether it's through token gating, whether it's through sort of, this community collective, perhaps on a Discord. Another company I really like is Fan Circles, because they do a white label build so that you can build it directly for your own space, for your own brand. And I think that's what's going to be really interesting going forward is, right now it's kind of a bit chaotic. It's still very fractionalized. But from a storytelling sense, that's what really brings things together and brings people together. What we're looking at right now are a lot of these, creative pops that have happened, and people are very connected to the collectibles they have. And, whether you're collecting Spider-Man or you're collecting Star Wars, or if you're a new collector and you're wanting something that's a new story in a new world, you want to be able to feel a part of that world and that story, and you want to keep being able to come back to it. I think that's what's really exciting. And I think, when you have incredible storytellers that are professionals and are building these communities with their fandoms, it's much like what Patreon does, but I think in a very different way, where you feel more of an ownership. You're not just paying for a subscription to get content, you're actually able to participate with the content and the characters and the worlds that are being built.
That's so exciting. Well, I think we're almost at time here, and I thought kind of a fun way to end this panel would be if we could go around and say, of your own NFT collections, do you guys have each of your own? Do you have a favorite digital collectible that you own? If you could share a little anecdote as to why, I think that'd be a fun thing to share with folks.
I think my favorite is it has to be the Matrix, just personally, because that was the first big project that we did, and I had a part in it, and we helped create the collection itself. So that was really, really fantastic to see it come to life, and just so great. I still look at my avatars and I'm like, wow, those look so cool. Another collection that I really like, and I have one, is a newer release called Brick, and I really like it because it represents, I think, the power of what this technology can do, and that it's called Brick because it's literally all individual bricks, and the guys who are launching it are going to be using that money to create an event space for young kids. So shows, community center, learning center, art classes. And that to me is really exciting and an example of what Web3 can do and give back to a community. So I like the fan part, my Matrix collectible, and then I like the community aspect too. Those are my favorite parts about NFTs.
I have to ask before we go though, did you red pill or blue pill?
I did both because I wanted to experience both, because we offer different experiences for both. So I was like, okay, but obviously if I only had one, I would have red pilled it. Only, yeah.
Well, I mean, I have to obviously rep my own project because I love my Laserface character at our Chihuahuas. Very close to home. I mean, it really was my very first. Yeah, he's such a cool character, Laserface. But yeah, I mean, it's really fun because we just let loose and have been very silly in our creativity. The development process, unlike developing with studios, you don't really have anyone to answer to but yourself, and it reminds me a lot of the Kickstarter project I had done many years ago with Titmouse Animation Studios, where we raised the money and we made our own cartoon. And and that to me is the greatest thing. It's that freedom and that feeling of being able to really express yourself and be creative and do it with people that you care about and you choose to be creative with. And then I got another fun little NFT. It was it's an ERC 721. It's like a fractal spiral. I'm super into spirals and Fibonacci sequence and like golden ratio stuff. So I found this really cool like changing spiral, and you watch it change, and I was like, that's neat. I want that. So that's my other favorite one.
I will do the self-promotional bit. I also own a red-pilled and blue-pilled Matrix avatar. I also got 2 of the Bullet Train avatars yesterday because one might get, axed along the way. I don't know. Yeah. I also own a fairly rare Chihuahua, so I'm excited about that. But one I want to highlight, and Shannon, I think this will kind of echo your answer a bit too, is one of the Bufficorn PFPs or profile pictures from the event called ETH Denver. It's one of the longest running and probably the biggest Ethereum-based meetups, and for them, their main goal is not to charge anybody for access to it. They want it really to be open and accessible and a way for people to learn. The way they've funded it to date is by doing things like issuing NFTs like this Bufficorn. So I've got mine. It will be with me as long as ETH Denver is a thing, and even beyond that. So that is one of my faves.
Awesome. I love how you had a little piece of all the different domains there. Not to be left out, my favorite is I have a painting that the artist Tristan Eaton, of whom I'm a huge fan but can't afford to collect, has done a few very accessible art drops, including he has a famous mural of Audrey Hepburn that's absolutely stunning. So I was thrilled to be able to participate in something I've missed out on in the real world, which is another fun angle of NFTs and digital collectibles for just the panoply of different artists that are out there. So with that, thank you all so much for joining me for this New York Con panel about digital collectibles, and stay tuned for some other great content. Thank you.
Thank you.